Hi everyone, it's Mary from Rocky Mountain Gardens, and today I'm going to do a little demonstration of how to whitewash terracotta. Now, I have several tools here that you will need, simple things you'll find around the house, such as an old sponge. I've cut a small piece off there for using in my technique. I have a t-shirt or any soft cloth would work. I have some blocks of scrap wood that I will be using. I have some gray acrylic paint, just plain old gray acrylic paint. And then I have my whitewash paint over here, which is in a container here. And I have mixed a flat white paint. And if you buy a paint that is both a primer and paint in one, it'll be a little bit easier for you and your product will turn out better. So, for example, I whitewashed my fireplace here a few weeks ago and it turned out really well. And then this is a pot that I whitewashed, a couple of years ago. And I've kept it in my house, so it's doing just fine. You know, the whitewash hasn't washed off from being outside in the rain or anything like that. So, this is my sample. This is what I'm going to be doing on one of my pots for you. And I'll place it over here. And I will get for you, this is a similar pot. It's just a little bit smaller in size. And the way I do this is I start on the bottom side by flipping the pot over, and then when you're working with whitewash paint, you must continually stir it, because how you do this is in this container I put about 1/2 of the paint, the full strength paint in here, and then filled up the rest of the container with water, and then you must stir it. It tends to separate fairly quickly, so periodically when you're doing whitewashing, you need to re-stir your paint mixture to make sure that you're not just getting water basically to do your whitewashing with. Okay, so I am re-stirring, and this is really quite simple. I'm going to take, and this is an inexpensive brush. I don't use expensive paintbrushes for this kind of work. Just an inexpensive brush, dip it in the paint, and you just start applying. And you can apply liberally, and I'm doing the bottom edges of my pot. I don't really care about the actual bottom of the pot. But you can see here, I'm going in all these little cracks and crevices in this raised design that is on this pot. And I'm just being very generous with the whitewashing. And I don't really care, it's not smoothed onto the surface quite yet. So I'm going to go all the way around my pot and do that technique with my brush. And you might notice that on my counter here, what I have covered it with is an old shower curtain, which I find is perfect for these kind of paint projects when you're doing them in the house. So I'm just about done. I'm going to do this last side over here, get in these little crevices and cracks of the terracotta design. Okay, so I'm going to stop there for 1 minute. And I'm going to take my wood block and I'm going to flip my pot over like this and stand it on the wood block. That keeps it up off the surface of the shower curtain, and it enables it to dry better, and it's not sticking to your shower curtain surface. Now I'm also going to paint about 1 or 2 inches on the inside of the pot. And like you can see, I'm just sort of slathering it on. And if it drips down, that's perfectly okay. And then we'll do the top edge of the pot. Make sure I get in every little crack and crevice. And you can see what this looks like. I'm going to get some paint on my hands, but that's okay. It just looks like this, kind of unfinished, and that's perfectly all right. Okay, so I have my rag here. And then my next part, as you can see, this is a pretty fast process. I'm just going to finish filling this in, covering all of the terracotta, and taking a moment to restir my whitewash. So this is very thin paint. It's very runny, not like normal paint, obviously, because of all the water content. But that's what sort of gives you the translucent look and the aged look on the pot. Okay, so, and because it's so wet, this is not going to dry quickly, and therefore you'll have plenty of time once you get your pot covered with whitewash, then you can play with it a little bit to get it to look exactly the way you want it to be. So, here we go. I'm gonna do the two sides real quickly here. And be aware that this paint also does kind of splatter because it's so thin and watery, and you may get some splattered on yourself. Okay, now I'm doing the back side also. And almost finished here with the back side, making sure I get everything covered. Okay, that's the major part of your job right there. And I'm just gonna come inside here and play with these drips a little bit that are on the inside first. Okay, smooth out my edges. And I'm gonna hold my sleeves up a bit here so that I can see, and I want you to be able to see too, what I'm going to be doing with this front area. So, it is all covered with paint at this moment. Now I'm going to kind of smooth it out. And then to get sort of a little bit of a wearing away look, you can take your soft cloth and just gently go and kind of pounce on some of these images to take away a little bit of the paint, and the images stand out a little more. And there you are. That's basically all you do. So if I take my pot, I'm going to flip it to the side. You can see I'll just do that same process. It's really quite fast. I'm going to smooth out all the paint here, make sure I've got every little crack and crevice covered first. Smooth out the paint. There we are. Set down my brush, and then here we go again. I'm just taking my rag and pouncing on it to give it a little bit of that reveal for, I have this raised design on this pot. So you can see, I mean, in a matter of minutes, you have a finished product. Smooth out, check for all of your little cracks that they're covered with paint on that side of your project. Okay, and we'll re-smooth. There we are. And then lastly, we do that pouncing technique again. Here we are. And then I have one last side to do, and this project is complete. Okay, so here we are. Okay, I'll just get a little bit more paint on my brush to be sure I have enough. on this last side. Make sure I get into everything. Check the edges. Okay, everything's covered neatly. And then a little bit of pouncing. And you want it to be very random and uneven, and don't worry about it. Now if I'm looking at all four of my sides of my pot, my front side appears to have less paint on it. So I'm going to flip it around here for you to see. Restir my whitewash. And then I'm going to apply just a little bit more paint to this side. Give it a heavier coat. One more time. Check my edge. And here we go. And here we are. I'm going to do a little lighter technique on here for removing some of the whitewash. And now I think it's a little bit more even around all four sides of the pot. So this pot is done. And so I'm going to move it aside right over here. And it will sit here in my kitchen on my counter drying for several hours. And then it'll be ready to go. And I'll have a really cool aged looking terracotta pot to use in my garden this summer. All right. Now my second project today, and I'm going to get out another block to use, are these plain terracotta pots, which I'm not generally a big fan of these, but I'm going to be using these. I've got these small connectors that I bought plastic that allow you to hang terracotta pots. And I have a dead aspen tree in my yard, and I'm going to be hanging 3 of these terracotta pots on my dead aspen. So I'm going to be using the same technique, but I'm going to add a little bit more to it. Instead of just going with white, I'm going to try adding a little gray acrylics. We have some more color variation. And the reason I'm doing that is because this pot has this raised design, the first pot that I did. These are just a flat surface, very plain, and I just want to give them a little bit more interest. So I'm going to open up my acrylic paint here. I'm just going to squeeze, I'm just using a cheap paper plate. I'm just going to squeeze on a small amount of the gray, and then I have a little bit of water that I'm going to pour in. So I'm actually going to water down my gray paint also. And I'm going to take, I'm going to actually use this piece. It has kind of a rounded edge on the sponge, which is perfect. And I'm just going to mix with my sponge the gray with the water and have a little bit of gray interest to add to the pot after I've whitewashed it. So we'll start again with the bottom edge. I'm going to re-stir my whitewash, and I'm just going to go around. I think I will do the bottom of the pot today because, and of course this has a tag on it. I'll try to remove. Ooh, it all came off, perfect. I'm going to do the bottom of my pot because it may be, you may be able to see it when it's hanging. So it's just, I don't really care so much how it looks, if it's perfect or anything like that. I'm just going to put some paint on it. And then I'm going to flip it over onto my wood block. And I'm going to paint the inside top 1 or 2 inches of the pot so that when it is filled with soil and plants, it doesn't look like this bright orange color, at least the rim area of the pot. So same as I did on the first pot, I'm going to go over the rim, the top part here, and just check this inside. Make sure we have fairly good coverage. But you want, as I said, for it to be a little bit translucent, you want some of the terracotta to show through. So it has that look of aged terracotta, not just a bright white pot for you to see. So I'm going to be trying to reach over here so you can see what I'm doing. Let's make sure I have this in the frame so you can see better what I'm doing. And you can see I'm just painting it on, but because it is watered down flat paint, it has a translucent quality even though I am covering every bit of the terracotta. So let me just move this around a little bit for you. See this portion a little better while I do some painting. So, you know, the first time I was trying whitewashing, it was a little scary because I didn't know what the results would look like and was I going to do it correctly. And it made me quite nervous to try. But after doing my fireplace, and it was that easy, I decided, well, you know, I can whitewash anything and make it look antiqued or aged. And it's not a difficult process at all. So here we go. My pot is just about covered. And if you take a look at it, because I'm using a paintbrush, it has like horizontal striations, and I want that to not be so perfect. I want it to be a little bit messy looking. That's part of that aging look. So I am going to take my brush now and kind of do some different brush strokes in different directions. So it doesn't look so perfect. And give it just some different looks. And then my last step actually is going to be to add some gray. So I'm going to take my gray sponge, and I think it's still, yeah, it still has plenty of paint on it. And I'm going to be pouncing with this sponge on here, and I'm going to start more at the bottom of the pot, and I just want it to be sort of random, blended in. So I'm applying the stronger solution right here, and just randomly putting it on the pot. And especially, like I said, I want the bottom to be particularly heavier with the gray. And then I'm taking this part of the sponge, which doesn't have really any paint on it, and I'm kind of spreading it out so that it looks a little bit blended in, I guess is what I would say, into the pot. And so I've done the bottom edge of the pot for sure, completely with gray. And I'm going to blend this up. And then I'm going to add some here on the top edge randomly. You have to not be afraid. It's a little scary, but you have to just not be afraid to go at it and have some places be a little darker and some a little lighter. And then your overall appearance will be just an aged looking pot that's been maybe sitting out in your garden, gotten dirty, maybe has some moss growing on it, and there you are. So honestly, my paint is almost completely dry already, the whitewash part of the paint, although I have gotten some on my hands, as you can see, but that's perfectly okay. And so here's my aged terracotta pot, and as you can see, it's really very simple and quick. So I'm going to take this pot and set it here because it's finished and it can dry on this wood block. And then I have actually 2 more of these terracotta pots I'm going to use this technique with. And then I will have a great addition to my garden this summer. Okay, well, thank you for watching, and I hope you maybe try this. You can see it is inexpensive and quick, and before you know it, you have some aged looking pots that you've done yourself. Okay, well, thank you again, and till next time, bye.